Hello, hello, GM, GN. Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Really happy today to introduce Tempest Finance. So before I I guess, start letting you talk, we're going to go over the agenda. So we're going to dive into, getting to know you as a person because that is usually, no, okay, I'm not going to say that's more interesting, but that's always my favorite part. Talk a bit about Tempest, all the really cool things that happens on Scroll, and then kind of wrap up with hopefully some alpha from you. But yeah, I guess we can just get started with introductions. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, for sure, GM everyone. My name's Abi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tempest. A little bit about Tempest. Tempest is the first, and as far as I know, the only liquidity management protocol to build on top of Ambient, which is the native DEX on Scroll. One of the major things that Tempest is trying to bring more into liquidity management is machine learning. A lot of the team have a quant machine learning background, so probably over the last 6 months, we've spent a bunch of time training all these models on how you can best position on-chain liquidity. And yeah, we're super excited to build on Scroll. We've already launched, and yeah, just continuing to grow and excited to build alongside the Scroll team.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, super awesome. I think I want to talk a little bit about like the inception of Tempest, right? Like, how do we get to where we are? If you can kind of get the bird's eye view of, you know, what's the inspiration behind building on Tempest? And maybe we dive into a little bit like why on Scroll, but I'm really curious about your personal journey here too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So a bit of like personal background on myself currently. I also lead strategy at Swell Network. So Swell, we're a liquid staking and restaking protocol, and as for how Tempest was ideated, um, from the work I do at Swell, which largely revolves around liquidity, we were looking at the market and there was not a ton of good liquidity management solutions, and this is where sort of Tempest was ideated. We are looking at how can we make LRT liquidity more efficient, and then from there we moved into more volatile stuff like the Scroll ETH pair is doing super well on Scroll, and so this is sort of where it ideated. Is we just wanted to build better liquidity solutions for LRTs, stable pairs, volatile pairs. Um, and so yeah, that's sort of how Tempest came along. Another big factor is that we've always wanted to do more stuff with Ambient, but ultimately getting users to go and provide liquidity onto like a a concentrated liquidity DEX is super complicated. They have to make their concentrated liquidity position. They have to put it in the right place. They have to use the right width. They have to change it over time in response to like market changes and volatility of assets. Um, and this was just going to be a super hard pitch to users at Swell. And so we're like, let's just get rid of all that. Let's build it directly into a vault and let's make it as close to a one-click experience for users so that they can really like set it and forget it in terms of the liquidity. And then the idea sort of built from there. That's where we got to where we are now, where we have a set of vaults that we've deployed onto Scroll. They allow users to have one-click access to liquidity and ambient through Scroll. Um, and yeah, these are the major things that we're trying to do. Let's like make liquidity efficient while also making it easy for users to interact with.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess kind of taking that background and then maybe making it a little bit more specific at Tempest, right? How does this all fit together? Like, how does it work? For those of us who are just like, ah, yeah, I have this experience, but well, what sets you guys apart, right?
Yeah, so I'd say the major thing that sets uh, a Tempest apart is one, we're the only ALM built on top of Ambient. So Ambient has a lot of unique features as a DEX, which was super attractive to us. Being a liquidity protocol is one, they've made a lot of optimizations on the gas level where doing things like minting and burning a position in Ambient is super cheap compared to Uniswap because they get rid of all these like ERC20 transfers, and they also don't actually mint and burn an NFT, which makes interacting with Ambient a lot more gas efficient. So if you go to mainnet I think mainnet is where it's most apparent because gas is so high. And you go to mint a position on ambient versus minting a position on UniV3, you'll just see how much cheaper ambient is. And at the swap level, because of like if you look at a swap, there's a few costs that go into it. As one is gas, the second thing is slippage, and the third is like the fee tier of the pool. And so by ambient trying to make gas as low as possible, this creates a better experience for LPs. And so this is why we were excited to build on top of ambient. And yeah, I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah. I know you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, and I have to address it, right? Incorporating AI. It's definitely a buzzword, but
Yes.
always brought in with intention. Yeah, let's dive into that. Like, what exactly is AI doing here? Why bring it in? Um,
Yeah, for sure. So I know, like, I say this to everyone, like AI, I think has taken a lot of like hype in crypto at the moment. We're seeing this in meme coins, and us being a team of like mostly quants and machine learning engineers, it's kind of been like one of these things that we've been working on for like probably the past 6 to 8 months. And then it's kind of really picked up hype in the past 1 to 2 months. So we're like, okay, we're kind of already going in this direction. What we're doing pretty much is AI at the end of the day. So that's sort of where AI kind of comes into it. As for the actual models itself, what we have built that we're super bullish on is like what we realize is that ultimately it's very hard to only look at on-chain data and train models. So the models that we've built look at all different types of data. We look at on-chain data, but mainly we look at centralized exchange data because this data is much more granular. There's a lot more going on in centralized exchanges than like on mainnet or even Scroll. Like if you look at Ethereum mainnet blocks at 12 seconds, and so there's only so much that can happen on Ethereum mainnet because it's only a change at most every 12 seconds. Whereas on a centralized exchange, things are changing, like every microsecond a trade's being made, a new order's being made, and this just gives a lot more data for us to play with to actually build out these models. As for what the models actually are, simply their role is to look forward in time and predict what we expect volatility to be in the future week. And so by predicting out what volatility is going to look like, we are able to say, okay, next week is going to be volatile. We need to make our positions wider this week so that when this volatility that we predict most likely happens, we are already positioned in the right place for the week after. And so Tempest vaults work and perform so well because we're always forward looking and trying to predict, okay, what is going to happen next and how can we get ahead of the curve and move before everyone else, and get ahead of volatility, because ultimately volatility is the biggest thing that wrecks on-chain LPs, because when assets are volatile, they can move in either direction. You don't know which direction they're going to move to, up or down. And the best way to mitigate this on-chain is simply by making your position wider, as then you face a lot less impermanent loss, and you're a lot better equipped to take on that volatility that you're going to see in the following week that the model has predicted.
Yes. Very cool. Okay, I'm going to do something so we can get a good sound bite clip from this. If you had to complete the sentence, AI enables Tempest users to XYZ. I guess 2 minutes is our cap. How would you complete it? Or you could just say Tempest enables users to XYZ, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Someone confirm with me. Am I muted again? Can I hear you, Abi?
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay. Okay,
That's my
perfect.
bad.
That was you practicing for the sound
Yeah.
later. I was like, okay, I'll give you some time to think. I'm putting
let's
you on the spot for sure.
let's do that again. All right. So AI in Tempest allows users to get access to big data in liquidity providing, because what we're doing with these models is we're looking at really where the most granular data for what these different cryptocurrencies are doing in the most liquid market, which is ultimately the centralized exchanges. the amount of liquidity on things like a Binance or an OKX or a Bybit or a Coinbase is much higher than what's happening on chain. And so really where AI really plays into Tempest is that we are bringing all of that intelligence on chain and into our models and putting users ahead of the curve when it comes to providing liquidity on chain. So this is the major thing that we're trying to do is we have all this data off chain. So let's use it to try and predict what's going to happen in the future and get our users in Tempest ahead of market events that we predict are going to happen in the next week. And this is really the crux of the intelligence or the artificial intelligence in Tempest. It's these models that we've built over the past 6 to 8 months are able to do this. And we have the back test to show that these models do work. And that's what we're super excited about is like a lot of this, and I think we'll see this progress a lot in terms of AI agents coming on chain and AI becoming verifiable, because right now there hasn't been a great way to bring verifiable AI, but there's a couple of players like Giza and a lot of these other restaking AVSs which are looking to bring verifiable AI on chain. So the next chapter for Tempest in terms of AI is going to be, let's take these really cool models that we've built off chain and let's bring them on chain and bring them permissionlessly to the vault. And that's when the protocol really becomes robust, because when you're able to access these models like through a verifiable AI inference, then the vaults become unstoppable. Like no one can come in and say, let's take the model down because now it's on the blockchain. And that's super exciting to us, is actually handing over these things to the model itself and letting it do its thing, letting it look at the data, and being able to make these predictions on all of these things that it sees off chain, but doing it on chain in a verifiable way.
Okay, cool. I didn't time you, so hopefully that was under 2 minutes. If not, technology is good at putting things at 2x speed. Alternatively, we cut it off in the middle and people are what's called fiending for more. They're like, we ended at a weird
Watch part 2.
Yeah, watch part 2. Come here. I'm definitely baited by brain rot TikToks like that. So maybe this is all intentional. But I kind of wanted to pick up a piece you had mentioned, especially for people who may be less familiar with the AI space other than the words AI, and maybe like robots coming to take over the world, right? You mentioned verifiable AI, which is going to be something that's really important, moving forward. What exactly is verifiable AI? And maybe to also help frame the question, like without it, what are the problems we're going to encounter?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of verifiable AI, this has been a super complex problem in crypto because machine learning models are very big. And so bringing not only the training of these models, but also the inference into these models on chain has been a very difficult task, because up until now, this hasn't been able to be done on a blockchain itself. But saying that, Eigenlayer sort of came out in the past year. Symbiotic has come out since then. And what we are really bullish on is using restaking to secure these things. I think this ties back to a lot of the experience I have at Swell. Swell's a restaking product. And so this is the direction that we'll be taking Tempest, in that by using restaking and restaking security, what we'll be able to do is do things that go beyond the confines of the EVM. And this is really what restaking allows, is it allows you to do things that don't need to execute on the EVM, but delegate consensus back to Ethereum mainnet, which is the important bit. That's where the security is where consensus is coming back to sort of like the base layer. And so by doing this, now machine learning models are possible. You have a lot of DA layers that are looking to host these inferences, and the real important part about verifiable AI is, can you verify that what you are seeing when you call this model actually came from that model and that model hasn't been altered? And this is super important for security because ultimately it's just the output from a model. And so this is the important bit: is what do we know what the model is, and then can we verify that I'm calling this thing, and is this thing I'm getting back from the same model that I think I'm calling from? And that's going to be the super important part for us. Is ultimately we're going to open source these models and put them on chain, and then we want the vault to be able to verifiably call these models, and for users to be like, okay, this is a model, the vault is calling this model, and here we can verify that, okay, this model that we can publicly see on chain is the one that the vault is actually using. And if we're able to achieve these things, then now the vault is fully hands off and functions pretty much on its own, which for us is the final stage of what Tempest will be. What Tempest will be on Scroll is ultimately, as all of crypto should be, I feel like it should be as hands off as possible. Let the technology do its own thing, and hand it off to the consensus mechanisms, which is what makes the protocol robust at its core. Is that there's not a single point of failure.
Yeah, I think I resonate with two things here: open source and letting other people do the work for you. Technology. I'm just playing. Actually, we have a question coming in from LinkedIn, so I'm gonna pop it up and then read it out loud to you. The biggest risk of using AI agents and ML algorithms in DeFi is that the actual funds of users are at stake. So using these agents can be risky. What are failback mechanisms you have in place in order to avoid these losses when an AI agent does something? Oh, there's more to this. Does something disastrous, for example, IP agent choosing a very short tick range, resulting in IL in bull market scenario. That was a lot of words. I can reread if you would like. Um,
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's multiple parts to this problem. Is one is how much control are you handing over to the agent? At the moment, I don't think AI is at the point to be able to make these decisions on chain by themselves. I think to some extent they can. The AI agent is able to act as an assistant, and this is where we think we'll see AI agents be in the next few months. Is you can tell the agent, hey, I want to provide liquidity into this pool, and the AI agent looks at the pool, builds the position, and then comes back to you and says, here is the position that I think you should take, and the user ultimately confirms it. And then the user has the ultimate sign off, but the AI agent, instead of being fully like autonomous and making that full decision, they are simply doing probably 90 to 95% of the work, and then the user has the ultimate sign off. I don't think ML models are at the point where they're able to take over 100% of that process. And I think especially in financial markets, it's going to be very important that we approach this at the right speed. And this is how we're approaching it at Tempest, where we are using machine learning models, but ultimately there are a lot of controls in place which don't just let the machine learning models do whatever they want. We are always verifying what's coming out from the models, making sure it makes sense, because even machine learning models are not deterministic processes. They're probabilistic in that they look at data, and even if the same data is going back into them, they can return a different result. And so ultimately, this is just a staged release for us, is where right now we are making sure that the inferences being returned by these models make sense. And then from there, as there's more and more confidence in these models, I think ultimately it'll switch to using smart contracts to enforce on-chain bounds. And these bounds are manually set by the user. But let's just say the user says, I only want to provide liquidity to USDC ETH. Then that's a constraint that's placed on the agent, and that's the only thing that the agent can do. And I think the key thing that'll make AI agents safe on chain is having good frameworks for what these on chain constraints look like. Because ultimately, anything that's probabilistic is somewhat unpredictable in some ways, and making these models as predictable as possible and reducing that volatility where we can is going to be key to making sure that they're able to be used on chain in a way that's safe and doesn't end in a big blow up for that particular user.
Cool. Some follow-on comment, not necessarily a question, but I think just to add color from the same user. Have a look at the compatibility layer by Stateless Solutions, which actually acts as verification layers for decentralized compute and data infrastructure. And it can be used to address the problem of verification you guys are referring here. So,
Very cool. We'll make sure to look at that.
yes, very cool. Gosh, I was listening to all of this and then I forgot what my next questions were. Oh, yeah. Okay. So a bit, I want to pull in, the conversation more around choices you make as a builder, right? Like what are the decision forks that you came upon when building Tempest? One example, I have to ask that, right, is like the decision to build on Scroll, for example. What do you need as a protocol to be successful?
Yeah, for sure. So ultimately, as a automatic liquidity management protocol, the biggest requirement for us is the chain having a vibrant ecosystem, as ultimately the model for us as a protocol is that, hey, ultimately liquidity is a utility on the chain, and it's only as valuable as much as that utility is being used. And so the biggest thing that we look for is which ecosystems are growing and which ecosystems are doing a lot of volume. And you can see this on Scroll. If you go and look at Scroll today, a lot of the pools on Ambient on Scroll are actually doing a lot of volume. And this is the major thing for us that is like, okay, we can build something here that's actually going to work because we have this inherent utility that's required by users on the chain. Users want to swap on the chain, they want to do things. And so let's get user liquidity and let's put it into the most efficient arrangement to be able to fulfill this requirement for this utility that liquidity provides. Without that, nothing works. Like the machine learning models that we have that we're using for the vaults are not magic. They can't, take any ecosystem and take any LP pair and make it profitable or make it a good pair for the ecosystem. Ultimately, it needs to be these two things coming together where we're making sure that user liquidity is in the right place, but also there needs to be this organic demand to swap on the chain. And that's one of the major things that drew us to Scroll and like why we want to build on Scroll is we could see that, okay, swap volume is increasing over time. This is going to be a good place to build. And then we identify, okay, what are the verticals on this chain that are taking off? Scroll ETH is doing a lot of volume. Scroll USDC is doing a lot of volume. ETH USDC is doing a lot of volume. But then there's also this LRT angle where Aave has a big influence on the chain. And so we're like, okay, let's set up vaults that are specifically for these LRT pairs, keep the liquidity super concentrated, and then allow for users to swap back and forth between the LRT. And at the moment, we're largely pairing against wrap staked ETH. The reason why we chose to pair against wrap staked ETH is so that we can keep the liquidity even more concentrated. And so, yeah, it's really just like, are there use cases in the ecosystem? Another big reason was that, like, obviously Ambient is on Scroll, and while I think Ambient is a super innovative DEX, because of all these gas efficiency decisions that they've made as builders, it makes Ambient super hard to build on top of. Like when you go to Ambient and you deposit, you don't get back a Uni V3 NFT. And so what Tempest also unlocks for Ambient and the rest of the Scroll ecosystem that we're super excited on and that is currently being built on is that Tempest tokenizes liquidity on Scroll. And so now that you have liquidity tokenized, it can then go do a lot of other things on the ecosystem. And this is what we're super excited for to do with Scroll is, okay, let's take a pair like wrapped ETH, wrapped staked ETH, and let's tokenize it. And then this LP token is pretty much equivalent to ETH at this point. And so this should be able to then go into a lending market and then users can borrow against it, which means that now you're embedding liquidity into different parts of the ecosystem. And before we saw like a unique opportunity with Scroll being a new ecosystem, one that's growing, to embed these more like novel DeFi mechanisms at the base layer and really like grow Tempest along with the chain.
Awesome. So, in case we have any questions, usually I guess there's a lag of 5 seconds. So I'm going to ask kind of wrap up questions in case anything else comes up. This is where I ask for alpha. Or you could just tell me any exciting things on the Tempest roadmap, I guess, looking into 2025. Or if you guys are working a lot during Christmas, that's also an option. But yeah, what's coming up?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the exciting things that'll be coming to Tempest is that right now we are working on our incentive campaign, which I think will be pretty exciting. We're trying to, I think, fix a lot of the things that have been going on in current incentive campaigns. Is that I think points have become a pretty big meta, but I think they're sort of potentially fading as a meta, and so we're thinking about new and innovative ways that we can sort of achieve a lot of the things that users liked about points, but get rid of a lot of the things that users didn't like about points. And so that's something that we're working on the incentive side. And as for like actual like protocol design and protocol architecture, where we've pretty much finished the V1. We've been building this for probably 8 months. Now we've audited the protocol 5 times now across a bunch of different auditors. So V1 is pretty much done, and from here it's just expanding, going to new pairs. We continue to work on the models in the background, so they're always improving. We're always adding new things to the models, which make them better. But what we're super excited on is the V2 that we're building, which we feel will really be a step change in how liquidity on chain is structured. And so, yeah, we're still very much in the ideation phase for V2, but this is something that we're super excited on that users will probably be able to hear about. And I want to say like the next month, in terms of what we're doing, why it's important, why it's going to actually make a difference to liquidity on chain, and why it's going to be much better than all the other sort of solutions that have been tried in the past in terms of like fixing on-chain liquidity. Because ultimately, a lot of on-chain liquidity right now is broken. There's a lot of things impacting it that make it not profitable. Largely, impermanent loss is a big one. That's the big one that we're trying to fix. But then there's also arbitrage loss as well, just because of how blockchains are structured. They have fixed block times versus a centralized exchange, which has a super fast order book. There's always going to be some level of arbitrage loss, and these are the things that we're trying to fix in our V2 by taking a revamped and hopefully very new approach to how to fix these things on chain and really make markets efficient.
So that was a good segue because it left some time for questions. So we have another question here. Another question about the future of Tempest and AI ML assistance usage in DeFi. An ideal case, maybe 5 years down the line when AI agents are very efficient. How do you see an AI agent operating in DeFi domain, specifically in liquidity management domain? What is an ideal agent interface while being used for liquidity management?
Yeah, this is something that we've thought about a lot, and I think 5 years is the right timeline for AI agents to truly take off in DeFi. A lot of the issues that I think AI agents will face are the same issues that we see in the TradFi financial markets, which is something that we have a lot of experience with. Is that one, models don't work forever. Alpha tends to decay as models are in the wild. The unique thing about the financial markets is that once you start doing something, you start interacting with the rest of the market, and this causes the alpha that you discovered to slowly decay over time, as either someone else will realize what you're doing, or it'll have this butterfly effect and change things down the road, which eventually will result in your model not working at some point in the future. And if DeFi is going to keep progressing the way it is, I think really what is going to be needed is that the compute of training models is going to have to become something that is going to be individualized. What I mean by this is that I don't think every user will be able to use the same model, and users will need to influence and train their own model so that you don't have this crossover of alpha decay between users. Because ultimately, if you have 1,000 people using the same model, that model may not work anymore. It may work at the scale of one user identifying like a blip in the market and going after it. But if 1,000 people are doing that, and it's like, if it's like you going to a coffee shop on your own versus 1,000 people going to the same coffee shop, it's now a different experience, right? Instead of you being in the coffee shop alone and having the entire place to yourself, you're now sharing the same coffee shop with 1,000 people. It changes the utility that the model is actually able to drive to the end user. And so ultimately, we feel the final state of AI agents is that models become individual assets that users hold and train and influence. And each model is able to understand at a deep level the user's risk preferences, like what their risk reward preferences look like, how they see money, what opportunities they want to go after, what ethical considerations they have. And I think this will be where AI agents have to go, because it's not like ChatGPT or Claude, where you can have a universal LLM that gets trained over time and everyone is just speaking into the same LLM and asking it questions, because financial markets are very different than simply like Claude or ChatGPT, which are really like a chat interface. Financial markets is something which it's really about what edge can you create as a user, and I think this needs to happen, if not at the individual level, at least at some level that's more discrete than what it is right now. Where I feel like right now, the only people that have enough resources to train these models are organizations, and what's going to change that is like hopefully things like decentralized compute, or compute just getting cheaper over time, computers getting faster, and so users being able to train their own models on like with their own resources. Yeah, at least that's my perspective on what probably the next 5 years will look like for AI agents in the financial markets. I think in other markets like social, AI agents will probably do some stuff in social. I think that's a completely different thing to financial AI agents.
Okay, I'm gonna also allow some time for the live stream lag to breathe. Um, so, our very close friend here, bullish statement, Tempest is great. But yes, okay. I think what would be helpful maybe is also action items, right? So we've talked about Tempest and all the great things you're doing. For scroll users or any users, I guess in general, watching this, how do we start interacting with Tempest and playing around?
Yeah, so hopefully this is super easy for anyone who is able to find.
Effortless.
Hopefully it's effortless. That's what we've tried to optimize for. And so, like, really, I think it'll be a testament to how easy our product is to use if you are able to just head to tempestfinance.xyz. That's the website. And then you can just enter the app, and pretty much everything to interact with on the app is at most 3 clicks. And so, yeah, hopefully this is super easy for users to interact with.
Okay, cool. Tempestfinance.xyz. What's your
Correct.
Twitter handle?
My personal,
Either or.
I think it's sort of. Well, let me check what that is. I think it's sort of embarrassing. I haven't memorized this. Let
The
me
Tempest
bring it.
Finance. Okay, basically the call out that I'm going to say after you say your Twitter handle is if it takes more than 3 clicks, this is this is the handle you should blast on Twitter, and flood the DMs.
Yeah,
It took me 4.
it took me 4 clicks. Well, if it takes you 4 clicks, we'll fix that. That'll be the first priority. But yeah, the Tempest handle is Tempest underscore FI. So yeah, chuck us a follow. Check out our tweets talking about. We try to put a lot of emphasis on security. So if you head over to our GitHub, you'll be able to see all the audits that we've done for the protocol, all those different security measures that we've taken to do everything that we can within our power to make sure this protocol is secure as possible. So yeah, really keen for all of you guys to check out what we're building, and you can also join our Discord, which is in the Twitter bio as well. And then yeah, there's literally a feedback channel, which is just me talking to users. So if you do get to 4 clicks, let me know, and we'll try and fix that. But ideally, you're getting into the vaults with less than 3 clicks.
Okay. Oh, fewer than 3 clicks. Okay, this is a new promise here. But okay. Yes. Head over to tempestfinance.xyz if you run into any issues, or you wanna send your applause, blast Tempest underscore Phi on X, or head into their Discord and check out their GitHub. Very cool. So I'm gonna end it here unless some question suddenly comes up and now I have to count from 5 again down because things are not optimized during a live stream. I want to say thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure always to get to chat with Scroll builders, and I hope you and everyone listening has a great rest of the day. If you have anything else you want to say, I think we can close it off.
Awesome.
Okay. Awesome. Cool.